As we mentioned, Attorney General Merrick Garland will testify before the House Judiciary Committee today. The Republican-led committee is expected to grill the Attorney General at the hearing entitled Oversight of the U.S. Department of Justice. It is scheduled to start this morning at 10 a.m. Garland is expected to stress DOJ's objectivity, despite the GOP's impeachment inquiry and anger over the special counsel's probe of Hunter Biden. An excerpt of the Attorney General's opening statement reads in part, quote, "Our job is not to take orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate. As the president himself has said, and I reaffirm here today, I am not the president's lawyer. I will also add that I am not Congress's prosecutor. The Justice Department works for the American people."
How shocking that must be to Donald Trump and his supporters in Congress.
Well, they still don't get it. Let's bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, who's following this. What more can we expect today?
Good morning, Mika and Joe. Yeah, these were some of Merrick Garland's most aggressive comments yet, pushing back against the idea that his Justice Department is politicized. Now, it's Merrick Garland, so we're grading on a curve here. He's a pretty subdued figure, former federal judge. But, they've been working on this for weeks over at the Justice Department, prepping him for this hearing because they do take it seriously. To them, this is a big lie, equivalent to the notion that the 2020 election was stolen. The idea that somehow there are political operatives over at the Justice Department pulling the strings and orchestrating these investigations of Donald Trump or going easy on Hunter Biden. There's just no evidence to support that. And in fact, Merrick Garland has appointed special counsels to the chagrin of the White House. In fact, a lot of people joke over the DOJ, political appointees, that they won't ever be working for the Biden administration. There's a bit of gallows humor for any other part of the Biden administration. But in addition to pushing back on that notion, Merrick Garland also plans to talk specifically about the kind of rhetoric that House Republicans have been using, which he and others believe is dangerous because there have been threats, and we've reported on this, to individual members of the Justice Department and the FBI, line prosecutors, line FBI agents. Their families have been threatened. They've had to get security protection. And so, he says, look, all of us at the DOJ recognize that the work comes with public scrutiny, criticism, and legitimate oversight. But he says singling out individual career public servants who are just doing their jobs, he's going to say, is dangerous, particularly at a time of increased threats to the safety of public servants and their families. And he goes on to say, or will say, we will not be intimidated. We'll do our jobs free from outside interference, and we will not back down from defending our democracy. So this is something they've worked on. They've given considerable thought here. They decided it's time for the Attorney General to push back against these bogus Republican charges and this environment that's really creating dangers to their own employees, guys.
Well, and of course, after the Mar-a-Lago search, you actually had reports of Trump and his allies trying to get the names of the FBI agents to put them under pressure. Jackie, I've got to say, this all has to be a real shock to Donald Trump, who went around telling everybody that the Department of Justice was his Department of Justice, that he had control over the Department of Justice, and he thought that Barr was his lawyer. And, of course, Barr often, despite what he's saying now, Barr often acted like he was Donald Trump's lawyer. So Garland's comments, though very normal to anybody else that's ever sat in the White House, must be a shock to Donald Trump and Trump supporters, because Trump really did believe that the Department of Justice should act under his direction and arrest his political opponents.
Yeah, Joe, and Garland has sought to be the anti-Barr, and a lot of his allies even will say that that has come to a detriment of his job performance, that his, ambition to distance himself and to be as apolitical as possible has actually hurt some of his investigations and some of the Justice Department morale at a time when the Justice Department is clearly under assault from, in an active bid by Trump and the House GOP conference and the Republican Party. But You'll hear today Democrats try to really reinforce this idea that David Weiss was a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney. He was someone who was Barr's guy. He was expected to investigate Hunter Biden very aggressively. That investigation lasted through to Biden. Obviously, that plea deal fell apart. And you're going to see, I think, Merrick Garland show that he tried to keep as arm's length as possible from this, which, again, some of his allies will say that that potentially caused some confusion in terms of the communication between him and Weiss and the authority he was given. But the bottom line that you're going to hear from Democrats and from Merrick Garland as well is that that David Weiss did have full authority to pursue whatever charges he wanted, and obviously now still does, as we've already seen an indictment was released last week from him indicting Hunter Biden on felony charges. But I want to underscore what Ken said about rhetoric here and sort of what this does to the line attorneys, line agents and investigators, all of the civil servants and the people who make the Justice Department run every day. This is something that has come through in a lot of the transcripts that we've recently seen from people who have been disputing a lot of the whistleblower accounts, the IRS whistleblower accounts in particular, from Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, these two people who really were sort of the cause of a lot of the skepticism of the now special counsel David Weiss to begin with, but this fear that people are unable to do their jobs because of the threat environment and the rhetoric from Republicans. And you're going to see Merrick Garland, I think, really try to defend his rank and file today.